Hello and very good morning to all of you listening and joining us for this third day of the eWorld Kickoff. My name is Buers. I am head of the eWorld program, so anything that's happening either on site or as now in the virtual sphere is somewhere in my head and on my desk. So I am very happy to welcome you to our third day of the eWorld Kickoff, as I said. That is also in the name of the entire eWorld team. We're very excited to have you with us today. Before we start, let me give you a very quick hint on the language selection. So today's event is available or will be held in English and in German, and you are able to listen to it in either German or English. So we have prepared 2 YouTube streams for you. You can choose them if you're not in the best or in the good session right now. You can choose to go to the other language in the eWorld community where you have probably started today's event. So this is somewhat what the page will look like. It's a bit small, but I think you will get how it works, what I want to tell you. It should be starting probably with the German stream, but you can scroll down, choose English stream right here, and go to, sorry, open session or Session öffnen in German. Click on that, and you will be able to start the stream in the respective other language. So I hope that is clear for everyone. I will leave it for here for a bit to give you the opportunity to choose the best stream for you to listen to. So the eWorld Kickoff is held in February right now from 14th to 16th. And this is to mark sort of a starting point for you and for all of us for the preparations of the on-site trade fair. eWorld this year will be held again on a very irregular date. So that will be on May 23rd to 25th. So a few more weeks, a few months to go. But still, right now, you can already start to prepare your on-site visit, any meetings that you might want to schedule or anything. Right now is the time to start, to get that started. So yeah, today's event and the days that lay behind us are sort of to mark this starting point and to kick things off literally. On the second hand, we hold this event on February to give you sort of an outlook on 2024, so next year and next year's eWorld event, when the on-site trade fair will be moving back to its usual and normal, so to say, normal date in February. So mark your calendars. In 2024, eWorld will be held on February 20th to 22nd. That is next year. This year, we will see each other in May in Essen, again, 23rd to 25th. I hope all these dates were not too confusing. We have everything regarding these dates also on our websites for you to find. So yesterday, we had a very exciting analysis with my dear colleague Heiko on the gas market and also future outlook on what the market will see. Among others, there was Eurogas's Secretary General with us, James Watson, was sharing his view on global corporations and on gas procurement until 2030, sorry, and beyond that. So that was very interesting, and I cordially invite you to give it a try and give it a listen or a watch. You can find the video in on YouTube or in the respective eWorld community event. The day before that, so on the 14th of February, we have been focusing on the electricity market. Among others, Tobias Federico gave an interesting analysis on the latest market and also why prices shifted that much in the last year and what will up to in the upcoming weeks and months and years. So if that is anything that you're interested in, I do invite you also to go and see that video, but just stay with us maybe for 2 more hours today to have a look on a very important other topic that is, I think, one of the central pillars for both of the other 2 industry parts. So we will be focusing on IT infrastructure today and also on data security more specifically. I have prepared the agenda here for you. So we're currently here and I am very excited to welcome Elad Shaviv right after this with a keynote, and he will be sharing a few insights on how the Israel Electric Corporation is handling energy security and resilience. So I am very curious to listen to him and to know what he will have to say on that. After that, after a quick break, I am very pleased to be welcoming 3 experts on the German market and on energy data security in Germany. We will focus a bit on the basics, so to say, take a step back and see what is important in this field, what are the threats, potential attacks, but also possibilities. And after that, so at about 11:35, we will finish with a positive outlook. I hope my a colleague Clemens will be joining us to talk about the opportunities of data-driven applications for the energy sector and what that means for the future of the sector. So I hope this gives you a bit of a good overview of what we're up to today. And I do hope that you will stay with us. Let me just quickly stop sharing to allow for Elad to start his presentation. But first of all, a warm welcome. Hello, Elad.
Hi, hello. Good morning.
I'm very pleased that you were able to join us today and to give us a bit of insights on what you're doing in Israel. I'm very excited to listen to that. And so without any further ado, I will head over to you. Maybe you can say 2 or 3 words on who you are, what you're doing, and then start with your keynote.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak here. Looks like a very interesting event, and I'm glad to take part in it. Hope that I can contribute here. So a few words about myself. I'm heading the business development team at the Israeli Electric Corporation. I'll introduce the Israeli Electric Corporation, or IEC in short, in a few seconds. I've been engaged with the utility market, the power utility market, for the last 10 years. I've been heading the Israeli Energy Innovation Community. I've been engaged also with quite a lot of the standards and working groups around microgrids, smart grids, everything that relates to the new energy market. Before that, I spent quite a lot of years at the IT domain, both at Cisco Systems, managing various startups. I spent many years at the cybersecurity domain. So the data security topic is very close to my heart. And again, at first I was engaged with it only from the IT domain, and now with the energy domain. So let me just 1 second share my presentation here. Yeah, can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
So when you asked me to share a bit about what we do with data security and energy, and as I said, I've been in data security for many years before joining the energy domain, and I'm still engaged with that. But I wanted to present the approach that we are starting to take at IEC, which we call it a 360 degrees approach to energy security and resiliency. So data security, actually almost like electricity, I think that no one actually needs data security. They are looking for the outcome, not for the security. The same with electricity. No one needs electricity. People need heat, they need light, they need they need transportation. The electricity is a mean to reach these goals, and the same is for data security. So we are looking on the energy security and resiliency, and the data security needs to support it. And let me first maybe just introduce IEC. So the Israeli Electric Corporation was formed exactly 100 years ago, long before the formation of the Israeli country, before we were founded. And we are the dominant player in the electricity sector in Israel. Until recently, we were the sole provider, almost the sole company that generates electricity in Israel. Today, we are still the sole power utility. We are state-owned, and we provide about 50% of the generation. We are the sole provider of the transmission and of the distribution. We still hold nearly 100% of the supply, but this is open now for competition. So it's, I think, the largest state-owned company in Israel. I'm not sure, but if not the largest, so one of the largest ones. Naturally, very critical to the Israel strategy and confidence. We do have also, in terms of the local market, a few interesting points. We have fairly fast growth of demand with electricity. Israel population is growing quite fast. Some is in organic growth and some is through immigration. So we have 2-3% demand, even though we are working very hard on energy efficiency. As I mentioned, that the market is being open now, both on generation and supply, and also the conversion to gas. We don't have any hydro in Israel. We have about 10% of renewables. So a lot of structural changes and deregulation in opening the market. And today we count a lot on the local exploration of gas. So that's just a quick intro to IEC. And then when we look on energy security, we have adopted the Department of Defense definition for energy security, and there are over 50 different definitions of energy security. But we look on energy security is the capacity to avoid adverse impact of energy disruptions caused either by natural, accidental, or intentional events affecting energy and utility supply and distribution systems. So it really doesn't matter where it was originated, but any disruption, might it be momentarily or long-term disruption, if it is complete outage or if it is just low quality of the electricity, any adverse impact that energy disruption is caused is related to energy security. And there are two terminologies that many times are being jumped between. One is energy security and energy resiliency. And we took here the definitions of NREL, the US Federal Laboratory for Renewables, on energy security and resiliency. And resiliency is actually one of the system requirements and properties to provide energy security. That's the way that we look at it. So resiliency is certainly very important, and it is part of the energy security that we would like to provide. Now, energy security has been around forever, but there are several new characteristics to the energy market that require today a new approach, which is much more dynamic, agile, because we won't be able to use the same method that we've been using for, let's say, the last 100 years. And the first three things, which are quite commonly referred to as the 3Ds, is the conversion to the need for decarbonization and the inclusion of all the renewable, less controllable energy generation. Digitalization, which relates directly to data security. Decentralization, which goes also with diverse and multiple actors, meaning that we're starting to have, but we're going to have many more actors which we cannot control, and they are spread all around. We can manage them, or we can communicate with them through digitalization, but the opening the system requires to take different measures to ensure not just data security, but energy security. We've all seen the recent unfortunate cases of geopolitical instabilities, which may also have an impact on everything, and everything here is interrelated one with the other. And the last very important piece of the supply chain is also the consumption. So we see a huge trend toward electrification. We are all familiar with electric vehicles, but we see electrification of different systems, which means that we need to ensure energy security even more than we had to beforehand. So we have more challenges to ensure the security, and we have more demand to have energy security and being ensured. And then we, with all the global warming, we have additional threats that are just being increased. And you can see here from NERC, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, that they warns of unprecedented array of growing reliability threats. And it moves from wildfires and extreme storms, so an extended drought, which had huge impacts now on energy supply. But we have issues with supply chain. For example, what we had during the corona virus cases, cybersecurity, the less controllable systems like solar PV or even wind. So we just see growing concerns and needs and challenges for energy security. Specifically in Israel, we have to deal with a few additional challenges. So as IEC is the dominant and critical provider of the national electricity system, any problem that we get within our energy, never mind generation, transmission, supply, has an immediate strong impact and critical impact on the country. And we have the complete responsibility across the whole supply chain, from generation, or actually even before that, sometimes purchasing or ensuring that we have the resources, the generation, transmission, distribution, and supply. So we have a complete vertically integrated responsibility. We are an energy island in Israel, so we can't count on any other country that would be able to support us if we have an issue. And because of our specific situation, we have very challenging geopolitical conditions, whether if we need to import some resources, or you can see below that we are one of the most cyber-attacked companies in the world. It is an infrastructure company, and we get just millions of attacks every month. And we have extremely demanding grid development, which I mentioned beforehand. So we have to ensure that we still provide reliable and secured energy, even though the market is changing completely, imposing new entrants and competition. So we're very proud to say that the World Energy Council, in their recent 2022 Energy Trilemma Index, ranked Israel as 8th in the world in country performance in providing reliable access to affordable energy. And when we talk about energy security, we look on those two aspects, reliable and affordable, because they're interchangeable. It's very simple to provide reliable energy if you don't care about the cost, and you can always reduce the cost if it's not unreliable. So you always have to find the balance between reliability and affordability. Now, the concept that we are looking at right now, as I said, is beyond just data security, and it goes into the whole threats, and that's why we call it 360 degrees electricity system security, is a comprehensive approach to look on all the threats that may have an impact on energy security. And we've divided them into three types. One is cyber or digital threats. The second is any type of physical threat to the system. And the third is electrical threat. And we can't look at one without looking at the others. And there are various reasons to look at all of those together. First of all, because if you only focus on one, then you may still have problems with energy security, this is the goal, even if you have ensured, for example, the whole data security. But you may have physical issues, you may have electrical issues. So the first is to ensure energy security. The second reason to look on the three of them is that you can better utilize the systems, because you have systems that may identify physical problems, but they can also contribute to some of the data security. For example, we use power line sensors that are more focused on electrical and physical occurrences of issues and occurrences, but they can provide us with a lot of anomaly behavior detection that we can leverage in order to find possible data threats. So the second reason to look on all of these is to better utilize the systems. And the third is that one issue can have an impact on the other. For example, when we have today smart meters, when we have digital substations, every element which is digital is a potential entry point for hackers and can position some threat to the network. Now, most of those new systems are either unmanned or less controlled, let's say, than a power station. Even if you look on a PV farm, it would not be so populated with people and controlled as, for example, a gas power plant. So you want to ensure that you don't leave up physical access in order to ensure also that you don't have data breaches. So from all those reasons, we took this approach that we have to look on everything together. And the second pillar of our approach is to look also on the security life cycle or a potential occurrence life cycle. So we are looking on a potential occurrence as a cyclic life cycle, starting first of all to have security by design. So the best way to avoid a security breach is by the right design. Then we're trying to prevent any sort of a threat, and again, looking on all three aspects: physical, electrical, and digital. We always work under the assumption that you can't have 100% security. So you need all the time to identify if you had something, and then the very important thing is, how do you respond? So you had an occurrence, you've identified it, how fast can you respond to get things back to normal? And the last piece is probably crucial, is to do some analytics and assessment of how you can improve it, and then next time have a better security by design in order to avoid getting into an occurrences. To give here just an example, so we're looking on physical, electrical, and cyber systems that we have. For example, on the physical side, I mentioned before, different type of sensors. We have sensors that we put on power lines. We have sensors where we have system that senses all kind of physical alerts, even without putting any sensors, just using fiber optics, which exist already in the transmission system. And then we get real-time identification of physical events. We get accurate fault location. So if something happened, we can have an immediate response. And we get information also on potential threats not only on the physical side, but this communicate also on the cyber side. Then we have power quality services, we have validation of electrical system sturdiness, and we have all kind of electrical anomaly monitoring and artificial intelligence analytics of the electrical behavior. And when we find anomalies on the electrical side, we understand that it might be either from a physical or a data threat. And then we can look also on the other systems, and based on this, decide what type of response and how to do it. And from the cyber side, so we start from the design, and from the design before implementing any new solution or do any changes, we have continuous threat simulation. So before implementing a system, we have a unique system that provides us with a threat simulation that might happen if we introduce the new system. And then we can see and demonstrate the possible damages, decide how to design it. And if something happens, of course, we have a lot of systems during an occurrence, but then afterwards, we have forensic analysis to recommend how to next time approach it. And so as you can see, there is a linkage between the cyber, electrical, and physical systems, and that's how we look on the converged electricity security. We do it both for ourselves, but we work also now with power utilities around the world. Basically, we look on the whole life cycle. You can see at the upper side. So how to start with the design, actually even before the design, is doing an assessment of what are the current threats, what is the current situation, do the design, look on what is the prevention, and then build the action plan for the identification and response, and afterwards the analysis and the ongoing assessment. And again, on the three aspects, electrical, physical, and cyber, where I see we are a bit unique as a power utility. We have our own engineering, actually the whole EPC capabilities within IEC. So we have very strong engineering team, and that's why we do for ourselves everything. And now we work also with our power utilities where we can get in either just doing strategic planning and assessment, or then really go into the design, and if required, also do the implementation and even the operation. So I think I'm just 1 second, last slide. So actually, what is the value for us that we see by the 360 degrees energy security benefits? It's a comprehensive approach that enables us to migrate from the left-hand side, where you see a component approach, which we had beforehand, into a systematic approach, which led us also to meet the new demands of the electricity system. So until recently, we could afford to be reactive and static, meaning that we know how the electricity network is designed, built, and run. Because it's static, we know if there is going to be like a large campus being built. Things are not really dynamic. And we could afford to be reactive, first because it is static, second because the demand wasn't that critical. But now with the electrification, with a very dynamic system with a lot of actors, we understand that what worked until now won't work as we look forward, and we need to be able to be proactive and be able also to be dynamic. And this approach to the comprehensive security systems enables us to be proactive and dynamic, which support our business and the energy market, which wasn't too competitive until recently, is becoming now very competitive, means that we need to shift from the technically led operation to business led operation, and that's what this enables us to do. So now I'm really, I think, on my last minute and my last slide. So thank you very much. Be glad if we have the time to take any questions if there are.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting as an insight on what you are doing at IEC. I don't see any questions in the chat right now, but I am sure that you're available for any questions. If there are some afterwards, I just send them over to me and I will hand them over to Elad. And I am sure that there will be some dialogue and continued conversation around the topic. I found this very inspiring, and I'm very excited to hear what my next guests will have to say on the point of data security. So because we will be joined by 3 more gentlemen, I ask you, the public, for a quick moment to give us the time to add a few chairs to our virtual stage here. After just a quick break, where we have prepared some outlooks on the on-site program for eWorld in May, and also a few messages from our 3 sponsors of the event. So we will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
society is demanding change. Change to more competitive, reliable, cleaner energy. To meet this demand, the energy market is transitioning to a lower carbon future. Shell Energy, a trusted global supplier, is here to help customers make the transition, offering better ways to power business today for a cleaner tomorrow.
Hallo und herzlich willkommen zurück. Bitte.
Hello and welcome. I hope you now can join us. We had some technical problems, but now it's great. I can see my three guests and I also heard them already. We will now, after having received the impression, the insights on Israel, we'll now talk about the situation in Germany regarding data security in the energy industry. Let me perhaps describe the background a little bit. In the past 2 days, we discussed about the energy market and the gas market. And of course, these are very much based on physical infrastructures and rely on infrastructures, which are also known as critical infrastructures, In the last year, probably everybody in the population has learned this vocabulary now as critical infrastructure. And we also saw that threats or potential attacks were very much covered in the media in last year. And I think in the public awareness, there is a completely new awareness of critical infrastructure. We heard about some hacking of the German federal parliament, some sabotage activities against Nord Stream 2, or also the destruction of fiber cables at Deutsche Bahn. And these still seem to be quite tangible. People understand that if a line is destroyed, it can no longer be used. No gas or electricity or data can go through these lines. But if it is about digital attacks, things are much more abstract and much more vague. This is true for the media coverage. This is at least my perception, and it is more difficult to explain what happened and what the impact is. So this is very often just said to be an expert's topic, but it's quite vague and people cannot really grasp the threat. But I thought it shouldn't be so difficult, and this is why I invited three gentlemen who can help us understand this whole topic much better and to give us more specifics on the narrative of the security situation, because there are terms such as cyberspace, cybersecurity, and we would like to give you some background explanations. We would like to create more understanding about this field and give realistic overviews of the threat scenarios. I would like to welcome my guests now, and you will then also be visible to the audience. First of all, we've got Andreas Lange here, who is member of the board of Cursor Software AG. He has been in the board since 2020, but before that, he also worked at Cursor in many different positions already. And he was mainly responsible for the activities in the energy sector. And he knows both the IT side and the energy side. He once said that based on the current situation, the energy sector is an attractive target for cyber attacks. Both software vendors and system operators have to act proactively to defend the infrastructure, and he will probably give us more information in the discussion. My second guest is Jan Fischer. He is head of sales at Rhebo GmbH, and he has been in the IT sector for more than 13 years and had various functions in the IT sector. He was an account manager, territory account manager, an account executive and project manager, and now he is head of sales. Within the company, within Rhebo GmbH, he is responsible for small and medium-sized enterprises, but also major groups of companies. So he has then also shared the claim of Rhebo, security made simple, and he will also explain in more detail what this means. And our third guest is Torsten Schekat. He is key account manager at EnBW Cybersecurity GmbH. Cybersecurity, this famous buzzword again. And he studied electro engineering, and for more than 20 years he has been working at EnBW in various group companies, in marketing, services, and also in the classical energy business. In 2018, he joined the field of cybersecurity, and the EnBW Cybersecurity GmbH has been founded in May of last year. It's great to have you here. Welcome to the three of you. Hello, everybody. I brought you a first question in order to kick off the discussion. When we talk about IT security, and I already tried to imply this in the beginning, please tell me whether it's true. Which energy infrastructure components are we talking about? What are the components that are affected by IT security? Perhaps one comment on the definitions, on the terms. I think it makes sense to move a little bit away from IT security. And Jan, perhaps you can confirm this. Perhaps we should rather talk about information security as a broader term. And then we've got the security in the IT world, but also in the OT world. And in an ideal world, they will be connected. Both worlds are getting closer to each other. And security management in an ideal world should really connect IT and OT. What OT means probably can be explained even better than by Jan Fischer. For us, it's very important as a solutions provider to point out that we need an integrated approach. Unless a company or an authority only has the classical IT world as the infrastructure. But if this is not the case, then you should also focus on OT security in the same way. I can confirm this from my point of view as a software company, and we as a supplier of an IT system are more in the IT area regarding data security and data protection. But Torsten, as you rightly said, information security in general is a central topic. And when we talk about energy companies, we have to see both. We cannot only focus on IT, but we always have a mix between IT and OT. Yes, for our industry, definitely this is true. Yes, now I would also like to contribute something. Mr. Lange is working in IT, Mr. Schekat is working in OT and IT, but we are only active in OT and the operational activities. This is what we deal with, and we very often see that there is not an interconnection, but there is a split between OT and IT. We should not have bi-directional transport, and this is what we are here for. We show what type of communication happens, whether it happens, and whether this might lead to potential threats. So IT is information technology and OT is operations technology. Yes, and some people also talk about process IT, but then they mean exactly OT. Yes, I just wanted to make sure that we have clarity on the abbreviations, on the acronyms. So everything is interconnected, is strongly linked, and this comes back to what the previous speaker already said in the keynote address. He talked about the 3 dimensions of security: electrical security, physical security, and the cyber area. And here he said that you talk about converged electricity security, and this is very much in line with what we just heard. Yes, the topics we are talking about here, of course, also exist outside of our energy and water industry. It exists in many areas of our national economy, but for energy economy, yes, of course, it's true what the colleague said in the keynote address. And the protocols also fit because we do the same things in order to take security measures, and we follow a similar concept. You have a workflow design, you have a workflow describing what you should do in case of a threat of an attack. You always have to define what needs to happen if a threat happens or if an attack happens. And this is exactly what we also do in Germany. Jan, one request to you. Could you perhaps very briefly in 2 or 3 sentences give more explanation on OT for those who perhaps do not have so much knowledge about operating technology, so that we know exactly what we're talking about. Operating technologies, OT, what this means? Well, this is everything that is below the control system, everything that you have, wherever you have communication. Mostly this communication goes into one direction. It's not an IT, like in IT, but what you have on a manufacturing line, this should not have an IP address, but the person in the control center should always have control. And this is what we are showing. If there is a new asset, if there is a new manufacturing system, if there is a new service, then this will be in the operating technology, robots, manufacturing technologies, substations. This is exactly what we focus on. This is OT. So the classical points we are aware of: an energy supplier who has all the substations visible in the control room and knows exactly where the energy flows or sees disturbances. This is shown in OT. Well, looking at energy industry, you normally have a control room and you have this room in order to watch the data lines, as Mr. Fischer said, to the substations, to a concrete power plant, to a water treatment plant, can also be aligned to an incineration plant, to a generation asset. So wherever there is a link, you've got the classical case of OT infrastructure, which needs to be protected. Okay, Elad, Shaviv mentioned that there are millions of attacks on the critical infrastructure in Israel per month. And this sounds very dangerous. Would you agree? Is there such a high threat? And if so, where would you mainly expect attacks? Mr. Lange, please. Before Mr. Lange starts, I would like to get in here because this is a very exciting topic, and we as manufacturers see that sometimes this is underestimated because attacks always want to destroy something or disturb something. And in the critical infrastructure, you have to know how critical you are, how relevant you are to the population. And this is the major target of an attack. And we know that also by a war, that the biggest war is no longer happening on the battlefield, but in IT, because you can there destroy the infrastructure. You could say that the systems of our federal army also provide operating technology. They also are connected with IT. And here you definitely need an error-free environment so that you can act. So you need the energy and you need to protect the critical infrastructure. And the same is true for private households. We have to protect the systems. And how do we do this? By using us as manufacturers, by using Mr. Schekat in EnBW, or by using Mr. Lange. We offer many different possibilities. They just have to be used. Let me add, data security in the energy industry plays a very important role from the point of view of IT. In our systems, we mainly have data of companies and consumers, of private people, and this data needs to be protected compared to OT that has other tasks. Another aspect is if there are communication problems between the energy supplier and the customer, then this is a point which is quite critical. And if you have processes such as smart meters or similar topics, you will have even more data about the customers, taking into account the consumer behavior. So the amount of data is increasing and needs to be protected. And Mrs. Buers, you asked what types of applications and systems are relevant in IT and need to be protected. First of all, these are systems that handle customer data, but also systems handling technical data, technical systems. And then you have to ask the question, what is left? Well, nothing. We have to protect all our systems in such a way that all this is covered from my point of view. But perhaps the colleagues are of a different opinion.
Maybe I can conclude this round of answers. First, my assessment in terms of quality. Ms. Buers, you asked about that. In our corporation, we assess those nuclear power plants that are still up and running. And that's why we know that every week there is a number of attacks or attempted attacks, at least a 3-digit figure every week. If you project to a month, half a year, or a full year, that is the same quantity that we heard about earlier. And then, of course, there are many easily detectable attacks which you can filter out easily with the right OT and IT security solutions. Some things have to be looked at more closely. If an attacker really successfully enters a system and breaches the boundaries, but usually we can effectively throw them out again. But when it comes to quality and quantity, it's also a question of motivation. For us, there are 3 or 4 different motives: espionage, sabotage, blackmail, and activism. There is also online activism in the cyber world where activists want attention, want to raise awareness for their ideals. This is where we expect the least economic damage or financial losses. In the other 3 cases, you also have to think about this from a management perspective. Mr. Lange, you were nodding when you heard this list of the 3 to 4 motives. Do you agree? Yes, I fully agree. What Torsten said about the different groups of attackers is something we also observe. There are groups of attackers. They may have a national or even nationalist background. From our viewpoint, when you look at the on-premises or cloud-run operations, you see examples from the past. For instance, primarily we were focusing on security patches and providing information. We made our contribution in that field in terms of security, but security patches have to be integrated at the customer's level. And the cloud aspect is, of course, different when you look at CRM applications or other programs, when this is more and more in the foreground, and there is the focus. That means a shift of responsibilities. If you are a manufacturer of CRM software and you usually just produce the patches and sell them, you have more responsibility now, and this needs to be integrated. Can you please explain for everybody who is not so into it what a patch is? Well, a patch is a change through re-coding. When you have found an error, you have a kind of short-term update for the software, and this will prevent the error from happening again, or the security gap will be closed. Okay, thank you. I think either Mr. Fischer or Mr. Schekat wanted to speak up. I didn't want to speak over you. I think it was Jan. Well, not really, but it's a good moment for me to speak. Maybe Ms. Buers can read my mind. We are always speaking about attacks, but for us, that's what we say as manufacturers and providers, it's anomalies. If in the communication there is something that I cannot really assess, that I still need to understand, that's the point. That's why we say, OT, make it simple, and security of the operation technology should be simple. And the simple thing here is then that we see a stream or an element of communication that is either known or unknown. When it's unknown, it's an anomaly, and then it's not necessarily legitimate. If it's illegitimate, we have to act quickly, and that's what's relevant is here. You have to be able to derive a conclusion, and if it's an anomaly, you have to respond quickly. First, of course, you try to compromise, and then you find a strategy for strategic participation. Maybe a strategic reaction may be a shutdown in order to protect resources. But first, you need an overview of the infrastructure to know which parts have to be switched off. Maybe there will be a brownout for whole city districts, and this will be extreme. But that's also the reason why the legislators are more and more focusing on this, and there is new legislation and reenactments of laws on security. And there is, of course, also the BSI with a certain focus on providing orientation. But that is a critical infrastructure we are all living in, and this requires protection. We have seen it. Cables are cut through, lines are cut through, and then aviation is hindered, and this keeps people from getting to where they need to be. And this is also a potential threat. It's a threat scenario, and of course there will be also physical damage. So you're saying first we have to detect anomalies, find out where they happen. Can you give us a ratio? So a certain amount of anomalies is kind of normal and can be let pass. And when does it start to get critical? Well, the ratio depends on the size of the infrastructure. Is it large or small? When you have a small one, you don't have many anomalies. When you have large infrastructures, you have a higher number of anomalies. And of course, that's our perspective. In the beginning, every communication is an anomaly. And we have to make sure that every part, every component knows what's happening. If there is communication that some parts do not know of, or that is not to be expected, that's an anomaly. So that's our question. Is there communication which is not supposed to happen that will lead to latency? It's not necessarily an attacker inside the network. It is a predetermined breaking point that should be deactivated and hasn't been deactivated yet. I think Torsten wants to come in here. Yes, I would like to add to that. In the course of our cybersecurity activities, Rhebo is a standardized solution. We have an interlinked architecture and a strategic approach where we can detect anomalies. And in order to answer Anne Buers' question, you asked about the figures. Let me give you an example. Let's say a grid-connected utility or energy provider with a 4 to 5 digit number per quarter. That's the number of anomalies per quarter. And that means events, incidents, whatever happening that is out of the orderly, out of the normal. And That means you have the normal operations, and then you have what goes on outside. And if you have 4 to 5 digit figures per quarter, how often this happens, and then you have to filter that. What might be plausible? What might be still normal? You will limit this down to a maximum of 20 significant reports per quarter. And you have to find these 20 and identify them and then initiate countermeasures, throwing out the attackers, taking preventive measures. That's the real point here. That's not a huge number of relevant incidents. It's a big number of communication and information events. The flow of information is large, and then you have to filter this down, and this has to be a very clean filtering, and then you need to employ a clear-cut solution or use a service provider for the utility. I think we will later discuss what can be done in concrete terms in order to counteract such incidents, but if this is a 3 or 4 or 5 digit figure of incidents, it's quite calming to hear from you that this will filter down to a 2-digit figure. It's still dramatic enough, and you have to identify these, say, 20. And as long as there is a successful attack, it is still something that we should not let happen. But I think Andreas Lange wants to come in here. Right, talking of anomalies within the individual systems, it's also important that you have a kind of monitoring and that you check and scrutinize the incidents. With a customer system, you also have a storage of communication data. And for instance, there is search-related data per day, let's say, a higher number of searches with between 12 and 100 sets of data. And this leads to data records, which means that you have a high number that goes beyond the normal level of data that is recorded. And before this can be automated, you have to get an assessment of the regular volumes. So that's an example for how we do it, but I think this also is true for what my colleagues here say and do. Maybe you remember the chart code which was playing havoc in Germany. WannaCry malware that found its way into many systems. It had triggered a lot of communication. Of course, I have to market our solution. Standard communication for smaller infrastructures is in lower 3-digit figures. But if you have a huge amount of communication, even if it's prevented, even if protocols are stopped, this will generate a very high number of anomalies. And what is so damaging is that the anomalies have to be checked. There are many derivatives at the free market that you can use for these checks, but it means you need a lot of resources. If you don't have the manpower, that will mean that very quickly there is a fire burning and you don't have any firefighting resources. So suddenly 15 to 20,000 reports can be filtered down to 10 significant ones where the communication is actually dangerous, but you need to get there. And here I'm very close to what Andreas Lange said. We are not really interfering. We do not interrupt communication. That's relevant for such critical infrastructure, that we do not interrupt the workflows or the communication. We give the information to our partners, and then we determine what the next step should be. And I'm sure Torsten Schekat will confirm this. There is often communication that is dangerous or risky, and then you have to define a workflow for yourself and determine what you are going to do.
Alles klar. Dann sind wir jetzt schon so ein bisschen in die Richtung gerutscht. Ich würde
Okay, then we have already touched this topic, but nevertheless, I would like to ask the following question. What are the different stakeholders that have an influence on critical energy infrastructures, and what can these stakeholders do in order to keep the systems as safe as possible? So actors, you said, but this is stakeholders who provide solutions. Yes, those who are attacked, who are in the system. This system, if you say this sounds very big and it's very difficult to grasp. So the system, can this be broken down into different subsystems or stakeholders? Andreas, perhaps, or Jan, can I perhaps start? In IT and in the OT world, there are, of course, a number of vendors, of tools, of modules, of solutions. For example, Cursor providing a CRM solution, or Rhebo offering security solutions in the OT environment. And of course, there are also security solutions in the IT world. And what they can do is they can, first of all, check whether they are well positioned regarding information security. They will also have to say where they store data, where you are, and here you can say that you are either in the European data protection area in the European Union, or where the General Data Protection Ordinance is valid, or whether you are outside of the European space. And then there are, of course, a number of vendors in the security environment which combine various technologies, coming back to IT and OT again, and who provide the logical solutions plus some services, very often called managed services, where for a company to be protected, technologies are used and the customer gets some support. So support in the implementation of the technical solutions, in the operation of the technical solutions, or the operation is even taken over by a vendor, or also offering systems or monitoring systems, identifying anomalies, assessing anomalies, and separating the relevant ones from the irrelevant ones, and then for the relevant anomalies, taking the necessary steps. So, and here, of course, the client or the customer needs to be integrated. They have to patch the server, or they have to perhaps stop their systems for half a day in order to solve the problem. But this is then in the responsibility of the company using the infrastructure. I hope that I could explain this a little bit, and I hope that I did answer your question, at least to a certain extent. Let me ask a follow-up question. So, companies in the energy industry using critical infrastructure are dependent on external support, or can they also do it themselves? Well, this always depends on the size of the company.
Das ist eine Riesenherausforderung.
The company. Doing it yourself or buying in services is always a strategic decision. You also have to assess what can you do yourself. Do you have enough resources? Do you need resources from the outside? And sometimes it's a mix. You do some things yourself, but you also have a service provider for others. And then you have a sliding scale here, depending on what the company can do themselves. We do see one trend, if I can say so as a user. Well, more than 90% of our clients buy managed services, and less than 10% implement solutions which we operate ourselves. Mr. Lange, Mr. Fischer, is this in line with your opinions? Well, first of all, Torsten, you already mentioned many points which can be derived as a solution. Transparent information policy, perhaps from our point of view, also in the development of new models and functionalities, you always have to think about security right from the start. So when you start developing the architecture for new requirements, you always have to think about whether this might have an influence on security relevant issues which need to be taken into account in the coding, in the programming. And in our programs, we also use libraries or software components of other vendors, and they also need to be monitored, because it may happen that there are points there that are relevant for our scenario. And you need the proper organization, but then very often this can also reach a size which is no longer possible to handle. And so you also have to have automatic solutions. This would be one solution in order to then get closer to good security. So many jigsaw puzzles at all different levels, which have to fit together in order to provide a real safe scenario. Mr. Fischer. I also wanted to talk about the definition. We are not only talking about energy supply, but also water supply. So everything that is in the field of supply can be attacked. Supplies can be attacked because if you breach the supply, it's a strategic breach. If you don't supply things to your population, the infrastructure is paralyzed. So this is sometimes forgotten. It's not only the energy sector, but the water supply is very important as well. If you cut the water supply, you reach a point where everything stands still. Or also companies that need water in order to build cars. Yes, water supply is very important, but also in the industry. The automotive industry was now also defined as an industry that needs to be protected. And so we'll see that legislation will get more and more active and go through the different scenarios, and will then define whether legislation is sufficient or whether new legislation is required, so that we get a new regulation, new legislation. And legislation is not inactive. They know that they also have to adjust and update their laws. And then coming back to your question whether a company can do it on their own or not. Well, if you do it on your own, you only see your own challenges. But if you use a service provider, you have the knowledge based on all the different customers. And we then also use this knowledge for the other companies. So we want to learn, and this of course will bring you big advantages, because if you are attacked by something that you didn't know before, then you don't know what to do. But if somebody else has experienced the attack already, you can then find a solution. And this is why people use us as Rhebo, and we grow with our challenges. Of course, the points that we identify as possible threats will be passed on to the other customers. We can then also make hint, well, you should also update this or that area of your system. Okay, let me stick with the metaphor of the jigsaw puzzle. The larger the jigsaw, the more parts you should have in the jigsaw puzzle, because if then one little piece fails, then the others can take over. We already heard about the legislator. What are the regulations and legislations that exist regarding the security of our systems? Well, first of all, we've got the GDPR, which puts us in a good position. I think here we really have a regulation which is very mature, and this is providing us with the general rules, but from a technical point of view, probably it's more over to you. Well, below the Energy Act, we've got the IT Security Act from BSI in version 2.0. It has been valid for 2 years now, and this also obliges us until May of this year for all companies having a certain size and a certain status. So until May of this year, they have to show that they have measured to detect anomalies in their systems. So now we think that the BSI, the Federal Agency for Security in the Information Industry, that in May of this year, they will, of course, not execute us if they have not completed all the projects, but if they initiated the projects, it's probably enough. And this means that all companies should have taken steps, and there may be some problems, but we also ask ourselves the question what the BSI will do if we did not fulfill this task, how they want to sanction us, and what are relevant companies, relevant companies in the energy industry. Well, here we would say also companies who are below the threshold, which are not relevant yet, they should also take a look at this. Because from the point of view of an attacker, you would say it would hardly make a difference between a company that has a critis status and a company which does not have a critis status. Perhaps the attacker would rather want to go below the threshold, attack the companies below the critis threshold, because they would assume that they were not protected well enough. So the IT Security Act in version 2.0 is a basis, a legislative basis, which is relevant for all our activities. And it also tells you how to implement it and what to implement. May is not so far ahead. When did you get the rules? Well, they were published in May 2021. Okay, then a question to Mr. Lange and Mr. Fischer. What do you think? Is the industry well positioned to implement this? Mr. Schekat just implied that perhaps not all the companies can really implement this. Perhaps even there are some companies who haven't even started yet. Is this also your perception? Is this your view? Well, yes, partly I can agree to this, because people might say we are still below the threshold value, so we don't have to do this. But this is only one indicator. Normally, everybody should have proper rules in their companies. And either you do this and say, this is my attack detection system, and the BSI should then also say what will be needed and how an anomaly is detected. And here I would also say, yes, relatively often we find that now that time is getting more critical, that people see that they have to get active. But we as manufacturers, we are very, very flexible. And yes, we now get more and more inquiries by companies who have been inactive too long. Our legislation does exert pressure, but that does not give a lot of support. And many of the companies do not have the financial resources to spend a lot of money on this topic. So sometimes you also have to first analyze where this money should come from. But we will see that the perception has increased, the awareness has increased, and the threshold values of last year were now reduced. And if they are lower still, then every energy supplier will be covered by credits. So you should really take a look at this, and you should also bear in mind that you have to take measures soon enough. Well, and it's never bad if you have all these technologies in place. It's bad if you don't have them, and then you are attacked.
I have to admit, the perspective of our customers always only shows part of a system, but many of them have talked to us about their project status, how far they have come so far. And of course, new systems may have to be procured, and the question of security aspects, operators, concepts get more and more attention. And that signals to me that there is an awareness, and manufacturers and producers of solutions always have this in mind. And depending on the size of a corporation, you need as much security as you need, not as much as possible. I think this makes an important distinction between professional players in the market and semi-professionals. Okay, so we have awareness in the industry, and the awareness is growing every day. Now we should wish for all this to be translated into practice successfully. A final question. Do you have some ideas, some hints for us how this can be translated into practice? Mr. Fischer, you spoke about competent decisions, support from the federal government, from the legislators. Are there other components that you would like to mention, or even hindrances? Basically, I would simply always recommend to get together with manufacturers like us, Rhebo, energy providers, other partner companies, to get going as quickly as possible. Of course, you need the resources in your own company, but if you want to make an important decision, you need the information that a manufacturer and the partner companies can provide, and then you can only benefit. So get in touch quickly, then define the next step. Don't wait for May and then get in trouble with the auditor. That wouldn't be nice and should be prevented. So I think it's a good thing to really get in touch now. That's why we are here, and that's why we are participating here, to increase visibility. Mr. Schekat, Mr. Lange, myself, we all try to increase awareness. And of course, if you know names, if you have contact, outside Germany, but it's always easier when you speak your native tongue. Yes, that's an important point. And I would like to follow up, keeping an eye on the energy and water industry. We have discussed this several times already. There is the world of IT and the world of OT. The decision makers in the world of energy and water should be aware that the players in the field of OT and IT should get together if they don't work together already. And at this working level, approach the other world, the other part of the world, get close to each other. the image of the world of industry of energy and water is very heterogeneous. There are straight A's, and there is the other end of the range where people really don't know each other at all. And of course, everything in between. So for the sake of your own company's security, let me appeal to you again, talk to each other, and of course, talk to us. We are here. Well, that's almost the closing words, but I would like to give the floor once more to Mr. Lange. I'm thinking everybody's looking into a digitization strategy, how to do it. And there is always the idea of maybe using a new system on the agenda. So if you want to introduce a new system, a new program, a new application, keep security in mind from the very beginning. Torsten Schekat has said it. When you look at the European level, European cloud service providers, European organizations, these are areas that you have to take into account from the very beginning. You have your own environment. Of course, your native tongue is always a benefit, but there is also the question of the legal framework, which may be different in other countries or outside Europe. So that's my appeal. Great, thank you. I think we could go on and on here and discuss further details. Unfortunately, we do not have the time for that today, but we will gladly do this some other time. For now, for today, let me thank you very much. It was great listening to you, being a part of this talk, asking you my questions, and hopefully I'm not the only one who learned a lot during this panel. I hope it was also useful information for our audience. So thank you for making the time. Thank you for being here. And I hope we will have another conversation soon. And speaking of conversations, we will have another panel very soon. Dear audience, give us a couple of minutes to rearrange our virtual stage.
society is demanding change. Change to more competitive, reliable, cleaner energy. To meet this demand, the energy market is transitioning to a lower carbon future. Shell Energy, a trusted global supplier, is here to help customers make the transition, offering better ways to power business today for a cleaner tomorrow.
Hallo und herzlich willkommen zurück.
Hello, welcome back, everybody. I'm happy to still have you here with us for this second panel we have scheduled for today. I would like to welcome Clemens PompeÜ, our host. He is General Manager of the Prototype Club. We're doing this together for the second time, and I'm happy that you will not just be doing the Prototype Club during on-site eWorld, but you will also be on one of the stages. I think the panel will be a kind of teaser for that. So it's then not just me, but our audience as well, who will know what to expect in May. And I think you have brought along some slides to talk a bit about what happens in May. Yes, thank you very much. And let me share my screen to briefly tell you about some main data. I'm also very happy to be here together with Michael von Roeder and Knut Hechtfischer. We will have some tech talk, so to speak. And this here is about the chances of data-driven applications for the energy industry, the I/O Energy Tech Forum 2023, which Buers mentioned. And what this is a teaser for has different focal points. One is, of course, our Prototype Club's tender, an invitation to tender. We will speak about innovation scouting. We will speak about commissioning. We will speak about extended functionalities of these platforms. We will also have an added topic, and that is the possibility for exchange between different sides of the industry. The CIOs, CTOs, CDOs are our target group. These are the developers of startups, energy companies. On the 24th of May 2023, we want to have this technical exchange, technical panels. We do not just want to have everything as is. It might be a bit heretic, but maybe the set of instruments is already complete. We have all the possibilities, technically speaking. So what else do we need in order to do it? This will be in Hall 5, this forum, and then we have different panels. We call it the etf.prototype.club, and we have the agenda here for you, CTOs, CIOs, as I said, CDOs. If you are interested to speak, follow our call for speakers. You can see the email address here on the top right. And we have the panels 1, 2, and 3, 3 covering critical infrastructures or CRITIS. And of course, we also have the Energy Tech Night in the evening. And I'm very happy to have the opportunity to tease you a bit, to invite you to be there in May. And now I would like to welcome my shooting stars, Michael von Roeder. He is Group CDO and CIO at Elia Group, member of the Group Management Board, and CDIO at 50 Hertz. This is a lot of text to introduce someone. And we have a second shooting star, Knut Hechtfischer. He's co-founder of Decarbonize and co-founder of Ubitricity. And I will now stop sharing my screen and focus on my invited guests, on the panelists, and start right away. With you, Michael, let me start with you. what you said in the Heise interview got a lot of attention, and this attention was, of course, due to the fact that in the interview you spoke about your intentions, your plans, the open source based system with cloud native spec. Michael, can you say what this is in one sentence?
Für die Energiewirtschaft hinzubekommen.
Well, we really want to do something for the energy industry. We want to have we do not only want to talk about cooperation, but really do cooperation. Well, this sounds very ambitious, very good, innovative, but a platform needs as many participants as possible. From the perspective of utility or a DSO, I would say, yes, well, they can start and we can perhaps join later. We've got different problems. How will the Elia group convince DSOs, utilities, and other players to participate? Well, we already have some TSOs who approached us and who want to join, not only from Europe. Why? Because right from the start, everything that we do should be open. So it's not a platform in the sense that you have to join, but it's an offer. And the platform itself, it was developed based on the requirement that we now need a new control system, 50 Hertz. And some time ago, there was the attempt to do this with Siemens, but Siemens then stopped their efforts. And we thought, what will we do now? Will we ask ABB or GE? Well, this would be probably also quite difficult because you would then buy a ready-made software package. And also knowing that most of the software vendors in the energy sector still use relatively old architecture. These are usually monolithic applications, and we think that it should no longer happen. You need modular applications or cloud native stacks, and we will need this. Yes, we are sure that we need this and we build it for us, but then in the next step we say then we can also offer it to others if they want it. And this does work quite well with DSOs, with TSOs, and I'm convinced that DSOs will also contact us, and I will first try it on an informal level, which is unusual for TSOs, I know this, but if it's done on the formal level, then we would probably talk about contracts for 2 years, and we will try to blame each other, and this is not really a good process. This is something that we did 25 years ago, but we also at that point in time said, okay, we will start with our own platform, and if you are interested, you can use it. You can also improve this. So we not only use it, but also perhaps improve it or develop new modules. So this is in a nutshell what we want to do. So this is more of a consortium that you want to invite people to also co-design this, co-participate. Consortium makes me a little bit nervous. This sounds very big. But then you should rather talk to Knut. No, well, you can call it, I would call it a community or an alliance. Alliance is a good term, yes. What is important here is that at present, this is based on the relationship between people. So it's not formalized. There are no formal contracts about it. I want to keep it as small as possible because we want to develop software and we want to get things moving. Well, this is exactly the topic that you say, well, you start first and then the legal department will come round at some point in time. But now briefly to Mr. Hechtfischer, so that he also is known to the audience. Knut, you've got a great track record, for example, with Ubitricity, and now you've got the next big project. What is the vision of decarbonize? How do you implement it? And then at what price? Thank you. Very charming. Thank you that I can be here in this group. Decarbonize, just like Ubitricity, is a metrological topic. It's about metering technology. And in our team of 5, we plan to tackle something that has always gone wrong in the past, because we do not have enough grid capacities. We do have bottlenecks in the TSOs, and we know that there is more wind power in the north of Germany than in the south of Germany. And as we've got these bottlenecks, and as physics is as it is, we do not use the wind energy that we have. There are data 6 megawatt hours last year, 1 billion, and well, you can imagine that this is quite a lot of money. In 2022, even more expensive. And so we are not building enough, and decarbonize means we have to use it instead of stopping it. And we need the incentives and technologies to regionally add capacity so that we can reduce the instances where you switch off the wind energy converters. So use it instead of stopping it. This is in a nutshell, and there are some problems in the energy industry. It's not only technology, but also the economics, as in all the business cases. And then we also have the legal situation and the standardization and the entire work with different boards. So sometimes this even a very minor project turns into a 10-year project, and this happened for Ubitricity. And so this is what happens if you have a buffer storage and want to use it in a multi-family home, and then you've got the heater and you want to also give incentives to consumers, then there are a number of topics which need to be clarified. But at the end of the day, it's very simple. We need addresses, we need data which make monetarization possible. We have to embed this into business processes. We have to supply interfaces. And then we just have to speed up. So we are here in order to accelerate developments. We think 6 terawatt hours that is not used, it should not happen again. We've got some suggestions how we can do this, especially in the area of power to heat. And so it will not only be possible in the smart home, but also with other players who are not involved yet. For example, multi-family homes. And the status, we started at the beginning of last year. We are now 5 colleagues. We are in a research phase, also with 50 Hertz and a smart meter gateway manufacturer. And we will then now get started. Can you perhaps also now describe this at a technical level in an understandable way? What is the interface between 50 Hertz and decarbonize? Can you already make some statements here, or is this still confidential information? Well, everything is political here, of course, and everybody would say, well, the interface needs to be with the TSO in the first instance. There is a smart metering system, then there is a meter, and this will offer flexibility, a CLS end, and then you have an interface for controlling flexibility. It's not us, we only provide the monetarization data, but from electromobility with 50 Hertz, so we are exchanging data with the grid, virtual balancing. This comes from e-mobility, and here it's also possible to address flexibilities in a virtual grid, but this is still research for stationary applications. Before I switch back to Michael, I would like to ask a question to the participants. I was told that it's also possible to ask questions in a chat, which would be given to me. So I invite the audience to ask questions. And now another question before I change back to Michael. Why is this done on the basis of a startup? Shouldn't this be done by the big companies? Why do you have this carve out? Well, I was asked the same question when I founded Ubitricity, whether Siemens couldn't do a better job. But in the regulated environment, startups can really start with small teams and move quickly. And I think big companies, they have too many rules and regulations, and the smaller companies are just faster, not because we are smarter, and smaller teams can also be embedded into big companies, but especially big topics sometimes have to be discussed with too many parties in big companies. So either they are in a big department and they are a project of the CEO, and it's not moving fast enough. So it's just about speed. If it is about speed, if you want to accelerate, smaller units are better because they can decisions faster because they don't have to agree and align with too many people. Michael, the platform, what would you say from your point of view? Well, I agree to what Knut said. This is why we are working together. In bigger companies, it's at least difficult to implement things that are done by decarbonize in a big company, also in a monopoly company, because the corporate structure is not sufficient. Knut already described this. The platform that we discussed earlier on, what we are doing there, it took a lot of energy. It was difficult to get it done because these are colleagues who think about, well, is this possible? What are the legal implications? What does it mean from the point of view of HR, of procurement? So there are so many people who want to get in or also have to get in, and this is not happening here. And regarding the platform, what is the nature of a good platform? It's open, it's well documented, and it communicates via standards. Sometimes there are no standards, and then you have to develop them with speed, but you should not discuss about a possible standard for 5 years, but you should just find a starting point and get it up and running. So the engineers have to get it up and running, and then you have to document this, and then I already have my standard and it's implemented. So this is the philosophy behind this, and this can also be done with big and small companies together. What is the basic prerequisite? Well, when the TSOs and the DSOs, but perhaps also RWE or others, how do they work with startups? Well, sometimes it's difficult. Knut will probably confirm this. I come from this startup world, so I think I know quite well what they need and what they do not need, but nevertheless, I did not fully manage to keep a promise that we are absolutely flexible, because it requires a lot of patience on both sides, but we think that this is the right way forward.
aus der Praxis heraus euren Startups für die Teilnehmenden hier.
You're grinning about the need for patience. Can you tell us from your startup experience what this means? Well, our job is to urge others. They present us with a situation. You have 100% of the capital and the workforce, all competences, all ignorances in one room. In a large organization, that's where you need governance, you need the executive board, but it's not possible to do this speedily. So you always wait and wait and wait. And if you are small, you can act quickly. Of course, you make mistakes, but you can quickly correct the mistakes. And that is, I think, a classical feature for 50 Hertz. In the past, maybe I can add that. You can, of course, ignore all the rules and just try something. And I sometimes get the feeling that this is a widespread approach now. You need something, oh, this is great, let's just do it, try it out. And the practitioners sometimes have to laugh, and they will not allow for such a thing to happen. I was at an experts meeting in Turin, and I presented the smart meter concept to them. That was in 2015, and they all laughed about it and said, we are never going to do this. So either your services are presented in a way that makes them compatible with the existing market environment, or you build something from scratch or from different parts in a new way. You can do this with an integration layer within a new environment. You need fully compatible IT processes. It has to work together with all standards, of course, but at the same time, you have to offer a new kind of service. This may sound rather abstract, but you need the speed of the internet, you need new methods, you need new interfaces, and at the same time, you need to speak the same language, so everybody who is on board can understand you. I'm afraid it sounds a bit abstract, but if something is completely new, even alien, many who are already a player in the field will say, well, maybe nice, but I will not play with it. So if you have some more time that you can use, and if you're a bit more flexible and you have some components along the chain that you might or might not need, then you can really try things out and find the right match. The energy industry will, of course, have to wait for the specifications from the BDEW. And then you have typical procedures that need to be followed. And it lasts maybe 7 years, this whole procedure. And then, only then, you will know what to do next. And this may be good, but it is too slow. We don't have the time. So something needs to be decided and then to be done. We can do this in a safe, scalable, secure manner. We can do this digitally. We can provide connectability. And of course, the legal framework has been taken into account. There may be some delta here or there, but we will be able to manage. And of course, we are expecting the legal situation to evolve further. And we think that is how it's supposed to happen. And there are quite interesting overlaps. And not everybody is now saying, we don't need this, this is something new, we don't want it. But there are the overlaps which helped us get together with these approaches, and that makes the cooperation more fruitful. So we have several visionaries here, and Michael said earlier, well, sometimes the mindset is, let's just do it first and then wait for the legal types to help with the specifications. But now, after what Knut just said, there is always the tech and code talk, but there are many more humane components, and there is the institutional component to this debate. So within 50 hertz, there might also be the need to convince people. It's not just a no-go or go decision. Not like Knut said, that some just say, oh, no, we don't do this. But some may say, oh, they're using a startup company now. They don't want us any longer. What do you say about that? Well, it's true. And what you just said is only the tip of the iceberg. It starts much earlier. The first question is, why do we need to digitize? Everything's up and running. But of course, digitization is more than just a smart grid. Going digital means you have new workflows, and it means you have a change of the depth of value added to what you do for the TSOs. So there was simply procurement with the oligopolist structure of suppliers, but this will no longer work in future. Let me give you a simple example. The legislators say, for instance, we need a limit for electricity prices. But if you only have 5 suppliers in the whole industry, you don't get anywhere with such an approach. So what you need is the ability, and this is also true for the DSOs, maybe not for all the small players in the field, but generally, yes. So what I'm saying is digitization means the companies have to be enabled or learn how to understand software. They do not need to be able to do it all themselves, but they need to understand it. And then they need to be able to decide what to make and what to buy, whether to cooperate, for instance, with decarbonize. They need more flexibility. And then, as Knut Hechtfischer said, there will be changes necessary in terms of legislation, regulation. And of course, this whole thing has been sped up enormously by the Ukraine crisis, but the legislator is already doing things, making changes. There are many changes happening now, I think more in very short time than in the previous 3 decades. And of course, the legislator will now listen more closely to the tenet of 50 hertz than to, for instance, decarbonize. We are regulated, so we are connected with political levels, with public authorities. So there's exchange about how to make changes to the legislation and regulation, which changes to make, how to speed up this redesign. Is it to be prioritized over the protection of the species, the protection of the climate? And we have cases like in Mecklenburg-Pomerania, where there are legal proceedings simply halted and not accepted because there is simply no more room for that. So it's true, and what I'm saying is that we see a lot of ups and downs and to and fro, and Klaus Müller, for instance, is a president of the Federal Network Agency who is a political thinker, but also someone who thinks about how to get where we want to be. One thing is clear, in 2045, Europe needs to be decarbonized. So the question is, how do we get there? And the additional question is, well, in 2032, we want to have 100% energy from renewable sources. How do we get there? Let me briefly come in at this point. I want to make sure you don't misunderstand me. If you offer something and somebody says, well, we might use this, but we won't, this is not supposed to sound like a complaint. It is a diagnosis. This is what is happening. In the past, we learned many lessons, and a DSO is not allowed to make exemptions. That's a local monopoly. If a privilege is given, it has to be given to everyone. No exemptions, otherwise it will all go to court. So they really have to have these very, very clean structures. No alternative. However, the way it's working, we want to have interoperability. We have competition in the metering industry. This is something that not many allow themselves and dare. We still have metering companies who are separate, operating separately. And still there is this very strict regulation. So we have a regulation framework, and if there are changes made to it, they have to be in pace. Everybody has to be in synchronicity, and this is all very much by the book and by design not very flexible. Almost nothing is getting a move on. And of course, this is turning into a very, very abstract concept. We have legacy systems, which mean that with 2,000 players, we do not try to accelerate everything, but we even put an additional layer on top, a new layer. And we do not do it differently because nobody is allowed. When you look at the legal provisions, you have to wait for full implementation with a lead time of 1 to 3 years. You have a new idea, and it takes you years to get where the idea is taking you theoretically. And for every terawatt hour, you have to wait and wait because we don't have a highly flexible system with highly flexible framework conditions, no matter which electrical device or household appliance we are talking. And we think it can be done differently, and it would be a huge benefit for everyone. Well, thank you for this remark, because I have a final question, and we have a question from the audience. First, for our panel, the headline was Future Now, and during this eWorld kickoff, we want to speak about the need to have a new regulatory framework, and we do not even need to demand it anymore because the legislator has understood that it's necessary. But how much technology is already there, is already in place? Do we need more interfaces in terms of technology, or do we have it all already and just need to find the right way to use it and put it to work within this this framework that we have? Is it just a question of human-to-human communication? Well, I do not know all the interfaces by heart, but as Knut hinted at, if you have this layer of abstraction, for instance, you want to build a new system for schedule management. This is being done by email today. And as Knut said, you cannot just say, overnight, starting tomorrow, we have network operators and power plant operators who cannot switch over overnight. But what you can do is take the Kafka message and send it via the energy bus. So what you really have to do successfully is use the existing interfaces and then turn them into something new, convert them. And one day, all will have been converted. Of course, this may be limited in its viability because you do not have all the data, but we are not at a dead end here. We have the communication protocols, And I think with a little bit of imagination, this can be translated to several levels and areas. And as you said, there is, of course, this human-to-human interface, and that's an important component. And you have to find the right contact with the monopolists. Obviously, all the start-uppers are doing it, but that would be the key to success, and that's what we are doing in Germany, or trying to do, trying to speed this up, to get ahead together with innovative companies, startups, scale-ups, existing companies. I'm open to all of them, and I think it's important that we do this together and we do not exclude anybody. And if we can do this consistently and with resolve, we will make progress and be successful and pick up speed. If you have experience with a transformation already, you will know that you have to make small steps at the beginning and convince people by proving them that this is not painful. And that's what we want to do.
Exakt, genau, Knut, wo du ja dann eigentlich
This is exactly where you get in, Knut, and where you say, yes, we are exactly doing this, we are showing this. And this is not only the showcase, this sounds a little bit superficial, as if it was just a mock-up. No, this is really a product. Yes, I was once told by a very experienced, brilliant engineer that if you want to understand things, things must be tangible. And you have to grasp it. And this is quite describing it very well, because in prototyping, you very often focus on the gap. This works, and then you have to think about the gaps. If you build a prototype and it works, but then you say, this has not been certified yet, this section still needs to be using a different gateway, but this is okay, this tool is ready, and so on and so forth, then the agenda will get more and more concrete. And it will also be made available to the other participants, and this increases efficiency. So this is just an increase in efficiency in communication and in cooperation. And you create new starting points if you start with prototyping, and this is accelerating the whole process. This is what is important for me. We are sitting in Friedrichshain in a basement where we just used the first decarbonizer, put it on the wall, and this is now there. And then we've got another meter, and we provide the data. And this sounds trivial, but still we have to discuss how it plays together with the gateway and what is going over one channel, and how do we do this with the logics behind this. This is important to really think about these steps, these details, and then to come together. And this is also true for the time series and the regulation and the different sections, 13b, 13.6, and so on. I can already see Anne urging me on, because we don't have any time any longer, but we do have a question which goes to you, Michael. Public money, public code. This is what you said in an interview once. Isn't this opposite to the critical infrastructure? Well, many people say that public code is always insecure, but there is also quite good literature saying that this does not have to be this case. So the processes for many industries are public. And so code can also be public. That's the logic behind it. Thank you very much. I do not want to close without saying a big thank you to you. Now, the audience could see the little sneak preview to the prototype club. It was very interesting. It was a great exchange. I would like to thank you, Michael, you, Knut, for your time. You are very busy and you are giving a lot of interviews to the media, but you also give interviews to us. So thank you very much. And now I would like to again advertise our IO Energy Tech Forum on the 24th of May during the eWorld in the Change Forum in Hall 5. And we will have a lot of important people. Mr. von Roeder will be invited, Mr. Hechtfischer, but also participants from other companies and startups. And we want to have a technological exchange. Please go to our homepage, the eWorld, or also write to us. Here you can see my email address and also Mr. Schweitzer's address. Just send you an email. Call for speakers is on. We want to also implement this format for the future. This will not be a one-hit wonder. Perhaps we'll turn it in a festival once. But thank you back to Knut and Michael, and I hand back to Anne Buers. Thank you very much. Excellent. A big thank you. And thank you very much for being on time and for also giving a sneak preview of our on-site show. Perhaps you already saw the IO Energy Forum. I'm really looking forward to the on-premise trade fair and what is happening there. But now I've got a last guest today, last but not least. And we now have my dear colleague Darius Pirsch in the meeting. He is head of sales and sales manager of eWorld Energy and Water. Please don't leave. He's not here in order to give a sales show here, but he just would like to give you a sneak preview to the show. Darius, it's great to have you here. Hello. Hello to everybody. What about the kickoff for you? You experienced this as audience. Well, I think it was great. We thought it was only a little teaser for our on-premise, on-site eWorld, but it was a very intensive one. It was really providing a lot of information, and on the 3 days we really had the possibility to discuss about the 3 topics which are very important for us at present. So it really made me look forward to our eWorld. I'm always looking forward to this, and I love this trade fair, but now we can meet again. Well, we did meet in 2022, but I think the sneak preview here was a real big success, and I look forward to meeting everybody in person. And I'm really looking forward to this. I'm really excited. Yes, I'm also excited, and you are here to give us a little overview. I already tried to make people curious about the program, but eWorld is more than just the program. Yes, and you can see me smiling also because you are smiling all the time. But the kickoff here, this was also a kickoff for our preparation phase. And we can see in the team how much energy is developed, how many tasks are ahead of us. And we get a lot of inquiries. Also, the companies are thinking about it. Companies also want to invite guests already, and there are also visitors approaching us. When will the tickets be sold? It will happen in 2 weeks' time. And this is really wonderful to see. Things are moving again, and this is important. And this also shows the great atmosphere among the exhibitors and the visitors. They are already thinking about the show today. And this is now the right time to start with all these preparations. We'll now have the final sprint, but now it's really up to us in our team. You know yourself what is happening right now. And we are now, of course, following eWorld 2020, which was our record high. And I hope that we can match it or that we can be even better. It's great what we see right now, all the registrations, and also the eWorld community is a big help to us. We can do things like this here, like the kickoff, and we can show our eWorld visitors more than just the eWorld trade fair. And for all the visitors, we've got the big opportunity to take a look at the list of exhibitors even before the trade fair. And you can also find the names of the contacts so that you can prepare for the trade fair. You can already arrange meeting times. You can set up your schedule, and this is a wonderful platform that we offer for everybody who wants to get involved in eWorld, no matter whether digital or live. And this will continue. So no matter whether we are talking about trading, innovation, smart energy, or in the new hydrogen area, we have a lot of inquiries. We are very happy about them, and eWorld 2023 will be a very good eWorld with a lot of network parties in the afternoons. That's great. That's a wonderful outlook, and I hope that everybody in the audience now knows what is happening and can't wait for the show. But you're already in preparation for 2024 already. Yes, indeed. And now we have the big challenge. Well, during the pandemic, we planned the trade fair 3 times before we finally had one in 2022. And now we are planning 2 trade fairs in 1 year. Well, I think in about 2 weeks, we will start pre-booking for 2024, and we want to give all the companies the possibility to plan the event with enough lead time, because the trade fair will be between the 20th and the 22nd of February 2024. So we want to give everybody enough time to prepare the 3 months that are lacking, because we have the next trade fair in May. Well, I don't have any more to say to you, because the audience has listened for such a long time already, and the other topics were much more exciting than what we are discussing here. But from my point of view, the kickoff was a big, big success. And this really calls on us to have a second edition. Do we want to spoiler this? Yes, we can spoiler this, and I am happy to announce this. We will have a similar kickoff, not do it exactly the same, but we will get better and better. And when we start the trade fair for next year, we will already have the kickoff in November of this year. We will have the kickoff 2.0. It will be between the 7th and the 9th of November. It will be from Tuesday till Thursday. And I'm looking forward very much to the preparation, to the implementation, and to you as the audience. And in between, we'll have the on-site trade fair. And now you have the possibility to prepare eWorld yourself by now starting to network with other people in the audience. And now let me change back. I will share the screen. Well, here you can see how to go to the speed dating session. If you scroll down on your page right to the bottom and you say open session, and you will see this view, and you will have 3 times 10 minutes to talk to different people. And I hope that everybody you were matched with will be ready for you, will be there. And if they are not there, you might find some other exciting people in the participation list here. and you can then have a good exchange. And here you find the instructions in text form. Our dear colleague Isabel will now also provide the information in the chat so that you can read this at your leisure. And you now have 4 minutes in order to get ready for your first speed date. So a big thank you to you for the 3 wonderful, very exciting and very dense days. It was fun for me. I liked it very much, and I'm really look forward a lot to the next eWorld on site. And I would like to thank all the participants. I would like to thank the sponsors, Adesso, Shell Energy, and Shaviv. And I hope to see you soon at eWorld in May.